We are going live.
All right, guys.
Hello, 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 family.
It's good to see y'all again.
Yes, this is Authentic Marriages here, live and in the flesh.
It's been a while.
It has been a while. It has been a while. So I am Kaara.
I'm Jared.
And for those of you who don't know us, we are the co-founders of Authentic Marriages, and we post content on all things relationships, right? So we are here today to talk about how kids impact your marriage. We want to tell you the things people do not often share,
Yes,
right?
Yes.
And so, babe, look, don't forget the YouTube people. We're also streaming live on YouTube as well. So if in case you missed the live now, we will have the replay on YouTube. So thank you guys for joining us.
Very excited.
Yes.
Very excited.
So
get right into it.
So the deal is that today we want to talk about how kids impact your marriage, right? A lot of times we do not realize the effects that kids have on our relationship. Like a lot of times we think we are often very optimistic, very enthusiastic, very much like I feel like there is this like fantasy reality of like what it means to have kids.
Exactly. Because there's an excitement kind of overload that oftentimes happens. Like your first kid is like, oh, you're pregnant. Oh, this is so exciting. You know, this is the start of your family. And so there's a lot of reasons why you'll be really happy about that.
Yes.
And then sometimes in that excitement and happiness, some of the details of like what can actually happen when your kids show up kind of goes to the background.
It goes through the window.
Exactly.
Right. So here's the thing. We want to be real. That's one of the things that you know we at Authentic Marriages we pride ourselves on is keeping it real and just being really transparent with things that people normally don't talk about. I think a lot of times, so I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I don't know if everybody knows that. And Jared is a psychiatrist. And so feel free if you want to ask us anything, post it in the chat. We will be happy to answer it, if not now, at a later time. But one of the things that oftentimes when I see couples or I see clients, they often feel like they're the only one suffering in misery, right? Like they often feel like it's just us. What's wrong with us?
This should be the happiest time of our life.
This should be. Why is this so hard?
Exactly.
This should be easier than this. And so I just want to kind of like just normalize the hard. Like first of all, parenting is hard. Having a baby is hard. And the sad reality is that most marriages experience significant marital dissatisfaction when a child/children are entered into the relationship.
Exactly. And you know, that's a big thing because, you know, what the statistic shows is that within the first 5 years of having a child, like that is for many couples the hardest time of their lives as couples. And the level of unhappiness and even sadness that can be generated during that time has been compared to the death of a loved one in terms of like how sad you felt.
Isn't that crazy?
When somebody you love dies, then that's how the level of sadness people can oftentimes experience during those first few years of their child being born, which doesn't seem to make sense because when you have a child, you expect that, man, this is going to be great,
happy,
a good life,
and sunshine.
Exactly. And the hard part is that when you're not feeling that, when you're not feeling happy, when you're feeling maybe frankly unhappy, it makes you question yourselves, like, what kind of parent am I? What kind of person am I? I should be enjoying this. My mom did such a great job, or such and such person I know did such a great job. They seem so happy. Why am I not happy?
Yeah. So there's a reason. There are multiple reasons, actually, why marital satisfaction significantly decreases when children are introduced into your marriage. One reason is postpartum, right? Like,
huge.
We don't talk about this nearly enough, but the amount of women who silently struggle with postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, even postpartum psychosis, there's like a whole list of perinatal mood disorders that you can struggle with after having a baby.
And when you talk about perinatal mood disorders, what you're talking about is, there's huge changes that your body goes through, obviously, in pregnancy.
Yes.
So that's how you're able to carry this baby to term and have this lovely baby who's bouncing on you, right? There's huge changes, but there's huge changes that happen after as well, right? Those first few weeks and months, your body's going through significant changes, but your brain as well. You're having all these chemicals that are changing. And for some people, the transition doesn't go as well as it should.
Right. So let's just put that on the table right there. Postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, even just baby blues is super normal and super common to experience. I think the challenge is when you don't expect that you're going to experience that, and then you as a mom, as a new mom, you're just left there like wondering what's happening with me, or why am I going through this, or you feel shame for even going through it, and you think like you shouldn't be going through it. So I just want to normalize, like, we should actually anticipate and plan for
that this is a distinct possibility.
Yes, exactly. And I think like if we approached it that way, like if we approached, listen, if this could happen to 95% of people where they experience postpartum blues, then chances are it will happen to me. And if I approach it from that perspective, then we can start having conversations about, well, what can we do to mitigate that?
Right.
And the number one thing that women can do to mitigate postpartum depression is support.
Right.
Your community. You know what? Authentic marriages, we big. Listen, huge. My clients probably so tired of hearing me talk about community, because it is your lifeline. It is your lifeblood. It is the thing that can save your sanity, literally. Right? So if you can rally help, if you can get support, if you can get people to help you during your postpartum journey, I would say for at least the first 12 weeks.
Exactly.
Now, maternity leave in America is 6 weeks, which is insane.
Right.
But I think that every mom should prepare for at least 12 weeks.
And I think for a lot of people, that the idea of asking other people for help is really hard. Right? And that's problematic, because really, having a child, it was never meant to be a two-person project. Where it's like, okay, well, you have the husband and the wife, you have this baby, and now you just take care of everything.
Yeah.
In the olden days, and for many, many, many years, it's never been that way. And it really shouldn't be that way now. Yeah. The expectation should be like, we can't do this on our own. Who are the people that we can tap into? Family and friends who can really support us during that time. That should be the expectation, that we are not going to be able to do this alone. We're going to need some help in doing it.
So going back to why are marriages struggling when babies are born? So we have I put postpartum as number one on the list, not because it's anybody's fault that I experience postpartum depression or anxiety or anything like that, but just to bring awareness that when this goes unacknowledged, untreated, you don't have help, you don't have resources, you don't, you're just struggling silently, it is going to impact you. And so different people have different ways in which they respond when they're anxious or when they're depressed. So for example, somebody who is depressed can go very inward. They can just kind of like withdraw. They can end up feeling a lot of like dark and just not happy, right?
And scary thoughts.
And then on the flip side, if somebody is like overly anxious about their baby, that can also translate to their partner as like becoming like very controlling, because there are certain things that, it's like, I can't let go of, or I need to have it in this particular way. Otherwise, it just triggers the anxiety. And so it creates a lot of burden on the relationship that unfortunately is just a byproduct of untreated postpartum perinatal mood disorders.
And for a lot of men, during this time, because obviously this is happening to the woman during this period, a lot of men are oftentimes confused. Like, they don't know what to do. They don't know what's going on. They're like, is this normal? Is this supposed to be happening? Is like, what am I supposed to do? Who am I supposed to talk to? So just being aware of it, oftentimes I tell folks, you want to be talking, especially in a postpartum with, when you're talking to your pediatrician and so forth about what's going on with the baby, you want to be talking about what's going on with yourselves. If you're concerned about what's going on with your wife, you want to bring it up in that context, because that's usually the first line to get in the help that you need. Because this is really huge. Your child can only do as well as you're doing.
Well,
so if you are struggling and you're saying, well, I'm just going to sacrifice myself to make sure my baby is okay, that doesn't work, because your child feeds off of how you're doing. And so if you're not doing well, getting better and getting the help you need will help your child to do better.
Exactly.
And will help your relationship to transition during those really turbulent first few months where like you don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
You know?
Even if you're not clinically suffering from like postpartum anxiety or perinatal mood disorders, if you're not, let's say you didn't meet criteria for like a diagnosis, right? Listen, I don't know a mom who is like not struggling during that period, right? Like we don't need a DSM diagnosis to say like, yo, I'm on the struggle bus. Help me because I'm drowning.
Send help.
Right?
Send help.
So send help. Yeah, send help quickly.
Right.
So again, like I just want to normalize like you don't have to wait until you're quote unquote that bad or until things hit rock bottom, until you're just like, oh my God, like I feel like I'm on death's door before you seek help, right? Like I just want us to normalize like getting help should just be the thing that we do in anticipation of having a baby, period.
Exactly.
Like let us not wait.
The default mode.
Yes, let us not wait until we are in crisis to get help.
Exactly.
Okay?
Exactly.
So the other thing that how this filters back into marital dissatisfaction is, so once a baby has arrived, it naturally is going to take a whole lot of time.
Nice.
Right? Like babies don't like just exist on their own.
Right.
So because of that time that kids naturally take, the couple relationship tends to be kind of like the first thing where we end up sacrificing ourselves, our relationship for the sake of the children, right? Like because literally a baby cannot survive without with like 24 hours of
care. And that's
care.
normal, you know.
That's so pretty normal.
You're supposed to kind of like, okay, we're going to take a step back to make sure that we keep this child alive. Like, you know, I remember literally when we came home with Chase, and I'm just like, oh my God, like these people trusted us with this baby. Like, why are you trusting us with this baby? Like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, we're not going to be able to keep this baby alive.
With this baby.
It's like, oh my God, somebody take this baby, you know? So it was a situation where we had to like psychologically just transition to the point of like, it's not just the two of us anymore, right? It's three, and the third one is not pulling its weight. You have to take care of this baby on your own, and hopefully your community is there to help you. But it's a huge physical, emotional, psychological transition to go from 2 to 3. And that is going to have a lot of effects for quite a long time in terms of figuring out how do we come up with a new equilibrium that works for a relationship.
Yeah. So here, the thing that you said is like, it's pretty normal to obviously take a back seat, right? Like to put your relationship on a back seat.
Right.
But it's not normal to do that for 18 years, guys.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. That is the big thing, because you have to realize that, yes, the dynamics of your relationships are going to change, but you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you're raising your kids in a way that, you know, they are the center of your home.
Yes. You know? So this is the trajectory that typically happens with couples. First, the baby comes. Obviously, it's like a time suck. They are like a black hole for time, right? Like your time just vanishes. Your time is no longer yours. A lot of couples may have another kid within a year or two. So it's like you never really like sort of catch yourself or recalibrate or get back into like your normal pre-baby couple routine, because it doesn't exist anymore, right?
Exactly.
Like everything has been devoted towards this kid and towards, you know, making them survive, right? Keeping them alive, right? What happens is that we get into these patterns and we get into these cycles where it's like the baby comes first, then the child comes first, then children come first, and we keep on putting our marriage on the back burner.
Thinking that we can switch things whenever we want to back to normal, right? And that doesn't work, you know. So an analogy is like, for example, in the NBA, they talk about, okay, if you're going to be a championship team, you have to have good habits from the beginning, right? And if you don't, you can't just turn it on when it's time to turn it on and to play well. You have to be building those habits. And that's the same thing with the marriage. When the baby arrives, you have to start putting in habits as soon as you can feasibly start doing that. Whereas like we're coming up with a healthy way to balance our lives with this baby here, where we're still giving the baby the care that it needs, while at the same time not allowing our relationship, which is the core of your family, to start to suffer and even die in the background.
Yeah. So the reason why marital dissatisfaction increases is because disconnection increases during that time, because we are literally spending less time with each other. We are deprioritizing our relationship. So we are not making our relationship a priority. And then actually what happens is that even though in the baby stage, like kids are demanding of time and attention, and we have to feed them, we have to play with them, we have to do all of these things, it actually, what ends up happening is that even as they get older and they get more independent, we still keep the relationship child-centered. It's almost like we never got out of that baby survival stage where we needed to, like, you know, give the baby all of our attention. It's just that we keep that. So a lot of times, what I see in a lot of couples is that they don't go on date nights. They don't have a lot of time or opportunities to connect with each other without children. Every outing or activity that they do it as a family. So there's very little time or energy left for each other. There's very little downtime that's left just for us. And then what that does is that it breeds resentment.
Yes, and that's huge, because for a lot of people, they're in survival mode, right? And they're in survival mode, and they don't realize that, hey, we can actually transition out of survival mode. Like this child is no longer this needed infant who needs to be fed every hour, every 2 hours. This child can be left for a couple hours with somebody who can watch them. So like we can get out as a house, as a couple, and do some of the things that we used to do before, right? And oftentimes we say, well, like we need to make sure we give the child everything that they need. So we're going to turn all of our energies towards them, and we can survive because we're adults. We're okay. But guess what, ladies and gentlemen? It doesn't really matter how old you are. You could be 5 or 85. You need emotional attention, right? You need emotional attention. When you're a child, you get that from your parents. And when you're an adult in a relationship, you get that from your partner. And so we need that time to kind of consistently connect. And if we don't do it, we suffer. We suffer. The relationship suffer. You become roommates in your relationship, as opposed to being friends and lovers within the relationship. And that's roommates. One of the things that happens to a lot of people. And then they turn around and it's like, what happened to us? Why did this happen? This is one of the big statistics. In the first few years of marriage, right, what ends up happening for a lot of people is that's when you see when people get divorced. People get divorced at that point in time, right? But what oftentimes also happens is that when kids leave the home, that's when people also get divorced as well. Right?
Exactly.
When the kids leave the home, people get divorced at that time as well. Those are the two big times. Why? Because the first time it's like all this stress and you can't deal with it. Your relationship just kind of falls apart. But if, let's say, you make it through that stress, you have a child-centered home, when your kids leave, well, what's keeping your relationship together? Nothing.
A wing and a prayer. Literally, a wing and a prayer is what keeping your relationship together. So a lot of times what I have found with my couples, hey Dawn.
Hey.
A lot of times what I have found with my couples is that it's not that anything bad has happened in their relationship. So nobody's like pointing to like an affair. We're not pointing to a drug addiction. We're not pointing to domestic violence. We're not pointing to like what I kind of consider like those big ticket trauma items. It's normal stuff. It's that I don't feel connected to you, or so much time has passed that I now have convinced myself that you don't care about me, you don't love me, you're selfish, you're just about yourself. And all of these things started it's like a creep. All of this started when kids entered into the relationship, because we basically shifted our focus from each other and we put all of our attention on our children, and we never regrouped and shifted it back to each other. And so then children became our priority. Our relationship took a back seat, and children was just, whatever. I mean, our marriage was like whatever, and then the children is like the everything from the activities that they're in to how many times a week we have to transport them here, there, and everywhere. All of their social engagement, everything like that. It's like nonstop.
Exactly. So you see situations where it's like every day of the week you got some activity going on. Weekends is games and all these different things, and there's nothing wrong with having your kids being well-rounded. The problem is you need to have your marriage well-rounded, right? You need to make sure your marriage stays well-rounded. You cannot give your marriage the worst or the last of everything and expect it to be thriving and doing well. It just doesn't work that way. The things that are important to you, you have to feed. And your relationship is one of those things. You have to feed your relationship consistently.
You cannot put your relationship on autopilot. That is not a thing.
It does that.
Right?
It doesn't work.
Like putting any relationship on autopilot is a guarantee for disconnection and discord.
I mean, it's a similar thing, you know, as your relationship with God. Like, if you're just like, well, I'm just going to church on Sunday and doing my thing, and then hopefully me and God will get close over time. That just doesn't work. You have to put in the time. You have to put in the energy. And it's the same thing with your marriage. You have to put in the time and the energy. And sometimes, a lot of times, that means getting help from other people to say, hey, we need a break time so me and my wife can spend some time together. Can you help us out? And maybe we can do the same thing for you guys as well. Because when you do that, it allows you to put not just yourselves in a better place, but it's showing your kids, which is really important. You're showing your kids how it is that a husband and wife take care of their relationship even when their kids are on. So when they get older and they're getting married, they have a better understanding of how do you balance kids and having a really healthy and successful relationship.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted the last things that I will say, and I want to give a warning, a friendly warning, to those who may not have kids, or who don't yet have kids but are hoping to have kids or anticipating having kids. Kids will not fix your marriage.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So
that's a huge one.
For those people who think that having a baby is going to bring you guys closer together, it's going to, you know, all of the discord and frustration and all the things that we have experienced in a relationship is going to poof, disappear.
Right. It's almost as if you think this baby is going to become this rainbow of contentment and peace and love that comes into your house, and like a Care Bear, it's just spreading all the love and care all over the place to make you feel happy. And it's like, what are you talking about? Like, that's not reality. I almost
guarantee you that if you are experiencing marital disconnection in any shape, size, or form before a child is born, if you are living in a marriage right now where you guys are arguing all the time, you feel emotionally disconnected, you're frustrated, you feel resentful, or you feel like, listen, like we're living parallel lives, like we're roommates, or you know, we might not have like any big set of arguments, but we also don't have like any deep intimacy or deep connection, right? So if that's you, a baby
is the last
when added to that quagmire, is going to highlight all of those things times 100. So if you felt disconnected before a baby, chances are that after a baby is born, you are going to feel 1,000 times more disconnected, more lonely, more overwhelmed, more frustrated, and more resentful of your partner. It's not going to bring you all closer. 9 out of 10 times it won't.
Not. And one of the phenomena that people sometimes think will happen, and maybe does actually happen, where you may actually come together as a unit, as like, okay, as parents, like, man, we've come together to take care of this child, and we're doing all these great things. And so you may be doing like A+ job as parents, and like you feel very close as parents, and we're on the same page as parents potentially.
Yes.
But your marital relationship is in a completely different place, and that oftentimes people mix up being a good parents and co-parenting together with their marital relationship, because just because one is doing well doesn't mean that the other one is. And it's very easy to forget about the marital stuff because we're always busy doing the parenting stuff.
One of the phrases that I hear all the time is, you know, the kids are only going to be young for so long, right? So it's just a short period of time when they're really little. And so we can afford to sacrifice ourselves for them. Like, I hear that often. And I just cannot encourage you guys enough to not believe the myth that it is okay to sacrifice yourself and your marriage for the sake of your kids, in the hopes that once they have left, or once they've grown up, or once they've gotten older, then we can turn to each other and suddenly start loving each other again. Disconnection does not need 18 years for it to happen. It can happen in 1 year. It can happen in less than 1 year.
6 months, easily.
Resentment doesn't need like
20 years to grow.
That's a short period of time if you're counting the lifespan of your kids being in under your roof. But in a relationship, that is like an eternity. It is an eternity when somebody is overwhelmed, when somebody is disconnected, when somebody feels alone, when somebody feels depressed. 6 months is an eternity to feel that way.
Exactly.
Right. And what ends up happening is that if we don't fix that, if we don't address it, it gets worse. And people learn to coexist.
Right.
Like people learn to coexist in happy marriage, in marriages. Like they learn to coexist even though they're not happy.
Exactly. And oftentimes maybe there's one partner who may feel like, oh, you know, things are relatively okay. I think we're doing fine. And the other person is like, man, we are not doing okay.
We're not.
But I don't even know how to start trying to fix this whole mess, because it's not like we can just give away our kids, right? And so that's the issue that people run into. But that's why you have to really be proactive about it, in terms of thinking about, okay, these are challenges that are going to happen.
Yes.
So how do we try to prepare ourselves from now? And then when it's happening, what do we need to do in terms of course correcting when we feel like, you know, I'm just feeling a little bit disconnected. I feel like we're just not talking enough. We're not having enough sex, you know, all of those things. Having those conversations is really, really important. But if you have those conversations before stuff starts to happen, it primes your brain to be like, oh yeah, we spoke about this.
Yes.
This could actually happen to us. And now it's happening. Okay, so no one's the bad guy.
Exactly.
This is just what's going on. What are we going to do to fix the problem, to make sure that we are getting back to the things that we were doing before? And that's usually a big fix, is doing a lot of the things that you were doing before. You may not be able to do it as much when kids show up, but you should be doing it with some frequency in terms of getting together outside of having the kids with you, so that you can remain connected to each other.
Exactly. And one of the things, like I always recommend, is buy back your time, right? So pay somebody else to do something that you don't have to do, like housework or yard work or something like that, where it's like, that's something that's taking your time. Buy it back, give somebody else that job, and then use that time together that you would have otherwise spent cleaning the house, organizing things, doing laundry, doing yard work, or whatever the case may be.
Exactly.
Buy back your time and then give it back to each other, right? Like those are just simple ways that you can pour into your relationship. Pay, if you don't have a community to watch your kids for you, if you don't have live close to your family, invest in a good babysitter.
Exactly.
Right.
Do the work to find a good babysitter.
Do the work, right?
Do the work. Ask around, that kind of thing, you know. Care.com, whatever it looks like.
Don't just be like, I don't trust nobody.
I don't trust anybody. It's like, well, that kind of, and trust me, as a child psychiatrist, the attitude of parents who are like, I just don't trust anybody, that usually does not bode well, because oftentimes there's usually some anxiety that's driving that.
Well, yes.
And anxiety is very infectious. Trust me. Your kids will pick up your anxiety and be like, yeah, like it's not a safe world out there, you know, based on your reactions to, like, I can't have somebody watch my kid for two hours, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to make sure that you're training your kids to live a life without you, because that's the goal of parenting. The ultimate goal is to teach your kids how to live a life without you being there to do everything for them and rescue them. And, you know, they have to start to learn to become independent, because at the end of the day, that is the end goal.
Yes.
And so when you start preparing your kids from an early age to be like, hey, mom and dad don't have to be all around you all the time for you to be okay, then that helps them even more than it helps you.
Yeah. Yep.
So none of these things are contradictory. All of these things really complement each other. Being a good parent and being a good couple in your marriage, those are complementary things. They actually accentuate each other, and they help to set a good example for your kids while maintaining your relationship, which will prayerfully go past your kids living with you.
Yeah. And one of the things that I will always say is that the best gift that you can give to your child is an emotionally healthy home.
Yes.
An emotionally healthy and a spiritually healthy home is one of the best gifts that you can give your child. And in order to foster that, it starts with you.
Right.
It starts with you, two parents as individuals, and then it starts with your marriage.
Right.
So if I can be the best version of myself, and Jared could be the best version of himself, and we could be the best version of ourselves in a relationship, that's the best gift.
Exactly.
That is the best gift that I can give my child.
And that supersedes, like, well, I want to make sure it's well-rounded. It has all these activities. All of those things are great. What is far better is a child who's emotionally feels safe and emotionally feels like they're okay because you're okay. Because children being okay is most of the time is dependent on knowing that their parents are okay. And if their parents are okay, it makes them feel okay. And so being that and doing that is absolutely critical.
Yeah. Well, that's all for now, guys. So feel free to drop us a line, shoot us a DM if you have any questions, or topics that you would like for us to talk about live, we will be going live 2 times a week on Tuesday and Thursdays between 5:30 and 6. And so look out for our live videos. But if you miss it, just shoot us a DM if you have any questions or comments or anything like that. All right, guys, take care.
Guys, bye-bye.
Bye.
Good to see y'all. Bye.